Hey, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of the Mo Love Podcast on Honest Conversations with Mo. We back at it, this Labor Day weekend. And I guess let's just get right into it. I want to start off this episode by getting into the topic of avoidance and perfectionism and how we kind of mask that as discipline, and by that I mean is how we sometimes tend to avoid the parts of ourselves that need growth, where we get caught in comfortability, in place of potential expansion of ourselves. And of course, as well as kind of the perfectionism of feeling like if we're being perfect, that it's a sense of discipline, that we're not willing to allow ourselves to make mistakes in order to get better, and then that kind of conflates our ability to truly grow, and then also the avoidance in the sense of in that mask of discipline, and that like we feel that, hey, if we avoid these hard things, that hey, this is I guess this form of discipline because we're willing to avoid the hard things. But that's not necessarily true. When you do avoid those hard things and really aren't able to get a grasp of getting yourself out of your comfort zone, that you tend to kind of just consistently wear this mask, and you're not really getting better. You're not really, growing, in that sense. And then also in the sense of that perfectionism, for someone as myself, where I'm very much a perfectionist, where I am very critical of myself when I feel like, I'm, making, or feel like I have made a mistake, or will feel like things are, aren't going right. And it can even lead to, cracks in the foundation, where we think, uh, that these routines that we've developed, these kind of perfect routines, and getting things in order, or overworking, over functioning ourselves, and kind of pushing ourselves to our limits to be perfect is some type of sense of discipline, but it only hurts you from truly growing, where true discipline is knowing that you're able to make the mistakes and be able to not only just make the mistakes but also learn from the mistakes. Is knowing not to repeat the mistakes, and not to repeat the mistakes in terms of that sense of perfectionism, but no, not to repeat the mistakes because, hey, you've learned from it, and now this is how we get better. And then the same in the sense of avoidance, where when you're avoiding things, you feel like, hey, I can avoid this because you know, I don't want to deal with it. But when you really confront it head on, whether that's a fear of, you know, fear of rejection, fear of, feeling like your freedom is, being restricted, and you're constantly avoiding it by, in, by indulging in the fears and not really challenging yourself of, hey, all right, what happens when I do confront this fear of rejection? What happens when I do confront this fear of my freedom being restricted? And like, how does it really look, and how does it fully flourish in that sense? And I think that leads into the next thought that I had of clarity as a muscle you build. And I think about this in the sense of, hey, we think about for myself, constantly being in the gym these days, and really building that routine of getting healthier, getting stronger in the gym. But the muscles that we forget to take care of, are also our mental muscles, the muscles within our brain, of how we can get better, how we can fully be able to process different emotions, whether it's even being willing to, process emotions and allowing that sense of vulnerability to come out. And I think that's what I mean by that, clarity as a muscle you build, being clear about the things that you do or don't want, in life, and knowing how are you going to really approach it, and how are you strengthening that muscle, and I think when you fall to, going back to that avoidance and perfectionism, when you fall into those lapses, you're only, weakening that muscle. You're not really being truly clear about the things you want, and, building that sense of clarity. You're kind of limiting yourself, overall, because when things truly become clear, that's when you're truly living and truly expanding, in the sense of your being, where when we kind of fine tune and continue to put in those consistent reps in, we realize, hey, all right, I am doing the necessary work to get better. And that's with everything, that sense of clarity, whether that sense of clarity is in the work that you do professionally, whether that's the clarity in your relationships, personally, romantic, it's just how are you constantly putting in those reps to become clear about exactly the things you want. And that clarity could be, hey, are you actually honoring the boundaries that you're setting for yourself, when it comes to, dating, or are you honoring those boundaries you're setting for yourself, in the workplace, and not causing yourself to, burn out. And it's just really being transparent with yourself of, hey, I want to strengthen this part of me. How do I go about it? And that's just consistently, putting in those reps. And obviously each rep isn't gonna be the best looking rep. Such a, for myself, like, obviously, like I said, constantly in the gym these days, and not every rep looks the best rep. But as long as you're working to work on your form, and get better in how overall, um that time you're putting in, and how you're really honoring yourself, is going to go a long way. And you're going to see, the definition, you're going to see the muscles building and strengthening and getting, you know ironically, getting that much clearer, in the sense of, that clarity. So when you're really building that clarity, it's how are you putting in the work, how you put it in those reps, and then from there, it's understanding, stretching versus striving, where stretching is more so, understanding, your physical capabilities, understanding the limits that you're willing to, put your body through, just as, yoga stretch, understanding, hey, this is when my body needs to be in, child's pose, because something's, strained, or something's hurting. And then, versus striving is, you know, how are you going about, reaching, your full potential, and understanding, your, your fullest, capabilities, and your fullest capacity, in that sense of where, when you striving for something that isn't there, you're really, limiting yourself. And also in the sense of, striving is, kind of that, understanding of, the focus in the moment, understanding that, how are you going about, improving yourself, building, that sense of clarity, building, that those stronger muscles, and then, you know that and then we go back to stretching. Stretching is, kind of understanding, what's impacting, your overall, physical well-being, what's the overall, the things that work for you, whether that's, a routine that works for you, whether that's a habit that works for you, and figuring out how those go about making you better. Because in understanding, striving, stretching and striving is understanding also the potential pitfalls. Sometimes, we get caught up in that burnout when we strive too much, beyond our own, capacities, and we're not setting, realistic goals, and really understanding, hey, how am I going about understanding my hidden talents? How am I understanding, this greater sense of purpose in myself, and not going about, neglecting myself, neglecting the present moment, where you're putting, your sense of worth and you're trying to prove it, whether that's making, your sense of worth, attributing that to, how much money you're making at work, or seeking, external validation from others, or even sometimes in terms of striving, is sometimes we strive in the wrong direction that's not meant for us, and we kind of get lost in how we're really, losing ourselves, losing that sense of self, and that only, further builds, that anxiety in ourselves, and further, adding more stress, onto our lives, and, you know onto our bodies overall, and then just the cohesion of these two, and kind of the overall balance between stretching and striving, is just knowing that it's just being present, and, getting out of your comfort zone, and how are you overall promoting growth to see that in this, this present moment of yourself, and this present moment of your being, how are you getting better, and I think that's the most important part of understanding and distinguishing, stretching versus striving, is knowing stretching is, hey, this is what I'm capable of. Striving is, hey, this is where I see myself going. Now, how do I put those two together, Um, and then from there, of course, want to get into, as the WNBA season kind of wraps up, that it's about to be fun playoffs, in the WNBA. Just obviously the WNBA season ends on September 11th. So we're less than 2 weeks away from WNBA season, regular season ending, where the teams that have secured playoff berths are, of course, the Lynx, who've been red hot all season, even with the, the injury to Nafisa Collier. Obviously, she's back now, with the addition of Dejanay Carrington. Courtney Williams is playing out of her mind. One half of the stud buds. But seeing, the Lynx, of course, like I said, been red hot all season, secured, pretty much looking like they, sealed the number one seed, once again this year, for the regular season. And then, of course, the Aces. Wait, were they? I can't remember if the Lynx were the one last season. I can't remember. Anyways, number one seed this season, the Lynx. Aces, number two, fighting back, crawling back, 12-game winning streak. Asia put the team on her back. They've been cooking. Jackie Young, Chelsea Gray, Jewel Lloyd. They've been hooping. The whole team has been hooping, over there in Vegas. Becky's got the team looking right. This squad, hey, this is a team, number two seed, hot at the right time. Pretty much, I think Asia's got the MVP sealed up once again. Fourth MVP. It's just hard to believe. Like, she's just balling out of her mind once again. Um, and then the Dream have secured, clinched the playoff berth. They've been consistent all season. Ryan Howard, Alicia Gray, that whole unit, that whole core, they just been balling out of their mind. And then Phoenix is currently, 4 seed, obviously trying to secure that. The reigning WNBA champions in the New York Liberty at 5, 6 Indiana Fever without pretty much Caitlin Clark all season, have been consistent, in that 6th spot right now. The Seattle Storm at 7, and right now, Golden State Valkyries, at 8. The team that obviously expansion team came out the woodworks. People did not expect this. They gelled as a unit, and obviously, hey, it's looking like they might potentially make the playoffs. Obviously, at 9 and 10, trying to fight for that A seed is the Sparks and Mystics. So we'll see as the season winds down. Obviously, we know our top three that the teams that pretty much clinch their berths right now in the Lynx, Aces, and Dream, but the remainder of it obviously is this seed in, as well as obviously that 8, 9, 10 spot who's going to fight out with about a two less than a week to go in the season, week and a half to go in the season. So it's gonna be interesting how the season wraps up in the W. It's gonna be a fun, exciting playoff. So I'm excited to see how the playoffs shape out this year. It's much tougher than people expect. People are obviously finally getting healthy at the right time, and we'll see how the playoffs turn out. And then next, want to jump into, of course, the NBA schedule release. NBA's right around the corner. My Lakers, we're excited, of course, as always. Lakers top of mind in the sense of you know I want to say 30 plus nationally televised games to be expected, with Luka, LeBron, AR, JJ, and the whole crew. We're going to be looking good. We got AN, we got Jake LaRavia, we got Marcus Smart. We kept Rui, we kept Gabe Vincent, aka Shamar Moore, Vando, squad. We're excited about the team. Connect still there. We'll see obviously how long that'll be, but not excited for Connect getting out of his summer struggles during the summer league and seeing how he's grown since then. Of course, Bronny hooped in summer league, so Bronny coming into this season, but we kick off the season against the Warriors. Christmas is against the Rockets. I want to say it's Christmas against the Rockets. And then it's a few other obviously notable matchups. Obviously, when we play the Mavs, we'll be playing the Mavs in the in-season tournament. They'll be in our bracket. There should be fun. And then yeah, so excited. Obviously, we'll delve deeper into the NBA regular season as it gets closer and closer. But excited. Obviously, the schedule came out. Excited for my Lakers. And it's a solid stretch early in the season, and then kind of gets tough later in the season. Not too many back to backs this year, which love, but it's gonna be an interesting season. Excited to see how things shape out. Of course, we'll dive deeper into that as we get closer. Um, but something that is right around the corner is, of course, the NFL regular season. And my Falcons, we got our initial roster pretty much kind of set. Our 53. I think we still have to make some moves to get under the cap because I think we're 8 million over the cap right now. But got to figure things out. More than likely going to restructure some contracts. So we'll see there. But anyways, excited. Obviously, we play Tampa Bay week 1. Week 2, Sunday night football against the Vikings. Who's week 3? Is week 3 Carolina? I want to say week 3 is Carolina, or I can't remember. I just know it's a tough stretch of 4 games. Yeah, the first 4 games are tough before our week 5 bye week. Then we play the Bills following the bye week, I want to say. So it's gonna be a fun season. I'm excited for. Obviously, we saw the big news from this weekend. Outside of my Falcons, the big news being Micah Parsons is no longer a Dallas Cowboy. He is now a Green Bay Packer and the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. Getting that 4-year, 188 million. I want to say it's 136 million guaranteed. Nice chunk of change for Micah. Well deserved. I don't know what the Cowboys are thinking. Obviously, they value Claney Clark and 2 first-round picks more than the perennial top edge rusher in the league. His first 4 seasons since Reggie White's the only one to have 12 plus sacks in his first 4 years since Reggie White. He has the highest, pressure win rate since I would say I think the stat I saw was 2021. gonna be interested. How this makes the Packers. Obviously, their defense is gonna be solid. I don't know if this takes them over the hump. Obviously, they got a nice core of young receivers. Jordan Love. Obviously, that defense is gonna be cooking now. So it's gonna be interesting in the NFC, AFC. You got your consistent stalwarts in the Kansas City Chiefs and the newly engaged Travis Kelsey to obviously Taylor Swift, and then Pat Mahomes and that Kansas City Chiefs squad. Obviously, Rasheed Rice suspended for the first 6 games, so that's going to be a hit to their offense once again early this season. See how they adapt there. The Ravens are back. You got Lamar, Derrick Henry. Their team is healthy on the offensive side of the ball. Defense is ready to rock and roll. The Bills. Uh, so those are obviously your consistent contenders there, fighting the AFC. Then obviously you got, I think, a sleeper team is probably gonna be New England in the AFC. And then in the NFC, obviously I don't want to be biased and say outside of my Falcons because I think we are going to be solid this year. Looking and hoping that we obviously win the South this year. Expecting a 10 to 12 win season for my Falcons, so we shall see. Obviously, barring health and staying healthy there. Obviously, we lost our right tackle and Caleb McGarry out for the season. We also lost our backup right tackle, Storm Norton. He's more than likely out the first 6 games of the season. So got to figure out Michael Penix's blindside situation. Figure out what Zach Robinson does with our offense. Kind of the initial start of the season. I think it's looking like Elijah Wilkinson is going to be our starting right tackle. So I should be interested. But I still, feeling confident about our team and feeling good. Defense is looking better. We're going to be starting a lot of rookies. Obviously James Pierce, Jalen Walker, but the news coming out, of course, Xavier Watson going to be starting alongside Jesse Bates back there at safety, and then Billy Bowman Jr. Coming out as our starting nickel this year. So it's going to be fun. Obviously, it's going to be a young team. Second year, Brandon Dorless making noise, so he's going to be there. Uh, in the interior, D line, bringing up pressure. Rook coming up in his second year. Obviously, we didn't lose Braylon for the season again this year, but he's out for the first 4 games. Initially, it's looking like right now, going on the regular season IR. So it's gonna be interesting, kind of how our young with mix of our veterans and Caden, Jesse, David Ademata, AJ Terrell, Mike Hughes, and seeing how our defense cooks, and expecting a lot of our offense out of our offense. Tyler, Bijan, Drake, Darnell's finally back. Obviously, missing pretty much a majority of training camp with an injury, but finally back. Kyle Pitts, a lot on Pitts in his fifth year, contract year there, but um, obviously that O line, that right tackle, more than likely that position there. But trusting guys, you know, rock star, and Chris Lindstrom, rising star, and Matt Bergeron, in the interior there, Ryan Nuzul, and obviously steady, Jake Matthews. So trusting our O line to help out whoever. If it is, Elijah Wilkinson, Brandon Parker, then we picked up Michael Jarrell from the Seahawks. Or our seventh round rookie if he shows up. Hopefully for doesn't, but Jack Nelson. And don't have to throw him back there. But obviously, if he has to be back there, I trust that the those other 4 will have that line on locks. Excited for my Falcons. But I was gonna say outside of the Falcons, who are a sleeper for me in the NFC. Obviously, we got the Eagles, defending champions, the Commanders, gonna be looking good with their pickups that they made in the offseason. I think the Rams and the 49ers, battle out there, and plus the Seahawks. I think that whole NFC West might be a whole dogfight. Actually, we'll see what Kyler does. And then in Detroit, you got Minnesota back there in the NFC North. I feel like who's a real sleeper in the NFC? I gotta think about it now as I'm sitting here, and I really think it's either going to be it's somebody in the NFC West, and I'm gonna. For some reason it's the Seahawks is calling to me. I feel like it's gonna be the Seahawks. Wasn't on the changes they made with Sam Darnold. But I think they're gonna be nice. I think they're gonna surprise a lot of people. And maybe sneak into the playoffs. We'll see, but I think they will definitely be a sleeper in the NFC. But it should be a fun, regular season. Obviously, the season kicks off on Thursday. Eagles Cowboys should be a fun matchup, and then of course, right looking to next Sunday's slate of games. With obviously tuning into the Falcons Buckets, obviously what I'll be watching, but excited, NFL's back, and excited to have football back. College football we saw yesterday with Arch versus the Buckeyes. My dog Arch did not look that great against the Buckeyes and Julian Sayin and Jeremiah Smith, but that Buckeyes defense, the defending champs might be the defending champs. Alabama's not the same Bama without Saban. It's looking like with the Boyer and so it's gonna be interesting college football season as well. So I'm gonna be tuning into that. But dang, my dog Arch did not look that good. I was excited for him, but I think he's gonna bounce back. He's gonna be fine. And Texas will more than likely see them again come the CFP in the playoffs. So they'll be fine there. But it's gonna be an exciting season. The Buckeyes, Julius saying, he's just saying that kid, he's nice. He's nicer than I was expecting. So I'll definitely give him that. But glad to have football back. We're back. And then of course, want to jump into top four. My current favorite album. Don't know if I have a current favorite album at the moment. I'll say my favorite, what I've been listening to consistently is my newest tunes to vibes to playlist, which is essentially all the newest albums I add on my Apple Music, and being consistently, listening to different sounds there. So I've been enjoying, that playlist and seeing, what new songs pop up that I really enjoy or, um, you know, favorite and add to the rotation. So I'll say more so than that than a favorite album at the moment. And then jumping into my favorite show right now is Dexter. This I don't know why I didn't watch it before. I've been getting into it. Dexter is like that. And I know obviously I'm talking about the original Dexter. I know there's been different variations. I know it's the current version out too, but I'm talking about the original Dexter. I'm on season 3, about to wrap up season 3, and this guy Dexter is it's saying because it's just I think it's telling in the sense of obviously this story of this guy who's working for the Miami PD and is essentially he's a serial killer on his off days or while he's on the clock sometimes but it's in terms of his mind and kind of the challenges that he struggles with and it's been interesting to see how that evolves and kind of eats at him and his lack of emotions or willing to tap into his emotions and I think uh it's an interesting way to kind of look at how we kind of misunderstand people in the sense of obviously what he's doing and how he justifies it in the sense of obviously he only commits his crimes, obviously live into his code and ethics that he lives by, and only murdering those who he feels, is justified or have done, uh, because he typically murders murderers. So he's, pretty like kind of cleaning the streets in a sense, but it's interested in terms of how he justifies it, how he tries to live by this code that was instilled in him growing up, but also dealing with the struggles of what he deals with internally of uh, being this almost this monster in the sense of killing people, and the routine and the approach that he goes into it. But it's really interesting and continue watching Dexter, rocking with the show for sure. And then what do I currently have going on? Not too much going on as of now. Got a couple work trips in the works, couple things in the works as well, but not too much going on right now. And really just been trying to embrace stillness, something that I definitely admit I struggle with, that sense of vulnerability, and kind of doing the inner work of myself and consistently doing that. So I think that's what I've been currently got going on. And oh, I will say, had this knot in my hair, and it broke off and lost a bit of hair, and I realized how I wasn't, like truly, kind of taking care of myself, or taking care of like my hair in that sense, and realizing that, but really realized like I think it goes back to kind of that earlier topic of that avoidance of like, oh, I feel like, hey, if I just avoid consistently taking care of my hair, that it's gonna you know take care of itself in a sense, or uh trying to have whether it is that that perfect look where it's not really that sense of discipline, where you mask it as discipline and feel like, oh, I am doing right by it. So I think that's kind of what I've been having going on, and kind of doing better at taking care of myself, and not only just my mental but my physical, not only my appearance, but overall, my health, whether it's, my eating habits, my sleeping habits, just overall, and, just being or become, a better version of me. So I'll say that's more so what I got currently going on. And then what I'm looking forward to, as I said, couple work trips, in the near future around the corner. Obviously the NFL regular season. And then just getting better day in day out, and getting more clarity, and properly defining my boundaries, not requiring external validation, really understanding what how I define my worth, and not putting or not requiring that on others, or requiring that based off of um numbers, in the sense of that, and then just consistently doing the inner work of journaling. I've been doing that consistently, of doing the things I enjoy. So just because looking forward to that, and also uh stepping outside of my comfort zone. So I'm obviously every day, just do my best to do that, of stepping out of my comfort zone in some way. So always looking forward to that. But as always, thank you all for, listening, to another episode of the Mo Love Podcast, Honest Conversations with Mo. Yeah, my rambling as always, but appreciate y'all as always, for tuning in. And of course, till the next time, enjoy y'all Labor Day weekend. Yeah, until the next time. Peace.